Am I the a-hole for not attending the engagement dinner my future in-laws threw for me after my fiancé hid my engagement ring? My fiancé, male 31, proposed to me, female 28 days ago. He has this habit of joking around and pulling pranks from time to time. It bothers me sometimes, but I try to have patience. His family wanted to throw us an engagement party at a restaurant. I heard his mom talk about how expensive the place was and how much money they paid for reservations, so this clearly was a huge deal for them. My fiancé and I were getting ready. I noticed my engagement ring wasn't where I left it before I entered the shower. I freaked out and looked for it everywhere. I asked my fiancé about it and he said he didn't see it. I freaked out and was running out of time for the party. He sat there watching me, almost losing my mind trying to find it, to the point where I started crying because without a ring, I couldn't show up to the party. I kept thinking about what his family would say and how they'd think I was irresponsible to lose the ring that is somewhat expensive. I gave up looking and sat down and just cried in frustration. Next thing I knew, my fiancé was standing in front of me laughing, with his hand extended to me with a ring in it. I asked where he found it, and he could barely speak and say that he hid it last minute before the party as a prank. I was in shock. He casually told me to get ready so we could get there in time, but I just sort of blew up on him and started yelling, saying he hid a ring. Made me freak out for 2 hours almost. It almost made me miss the party. He was like, "Relax, it was a prank, okay? Don't make a big deal out of it and ruin the evening." I told him I wasn't going to the party and that if his family asked, I would tell them it was because he hid my ring. He freaked out and started begging me to let it go and just go with him, but I refused and went into the bedroom, took my medication and stayed there. He lost it and kept saying that I blew this out of proportion and that I ruined my own party and cost his family money and disrespected them by not attending. His family found out and they were mad at him, but also me for choosing to not attend and getting over it. But I was in a horrible state emotionally and couldn't handle being in public place after what happened. Am I the a-hole for choosing to not go after he hid a ring? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. 2 hours? That's long past prank. Even 5 minutes is too long. 5 minutes with a prankster, you still think it could be him and didn't make it okay. Also, it stops being funny when you start crying. Yes, almost 2 hours of me, 1, freaking out. 2, running around turning the place upside down looking for it. And 3, worrying and freaking about not finding it and not making it to the party. That was viciously cruel on his part. Vile and abusive. I'm begging you, old woman to young woman, give that ring back and shut that sadistic bastard out of your life. Really, that was just horrifying to read. That will be the story of your whole life if you marry this twisted creep. Info? Why would you marry someone who thinks making you cry is funny? He said that I'm prone to crying, and that I get emotional and cry over every little thing, which isn't his fault. Basically calling me a drama queen. I do tend to overreact sometimes, but I genuinely was worried about losing the ring. His family would have given me hell, that's for sure. Not the a-hole. Please take a hard look and understand that his behavior is neither funny nor at all normal. It was a show for him controlling you and enjoying your reaction. This is not someone you marry. He did something awful to you and he really enjoyed watching you suffer. For 2 hours. Then he blamed you for overreacting. Sounds a bit dramatic, but I don't think it's safe for you to marry him. Next story. Am I the a-hole for leaving the restaurant when my fiancé told me to pay for his friend's meal just because he had cancer? So, my female 28 fiancé Jack, male 30, has a friend Steve, male 33, who had cancer but is now doing better. He's one of Jack's closest friends, and Jack was there with him all the way to the end of the treatment. Steve started going out and socializing again, which is great. However, whenever we go out, Jack will expect me to pay for Steve's meals or drinks, using the excuse of he had cancer. Show some empathy. We went to an electronics shop one time, and Jack told me to pay for Steve's purchases because he has had cancer. I sucked it up once and twice, but then told him I couldn't do it anymore. He emphasized on the fact that Steve had cancer and reminded me of how his financial status was affected, and so we should help from time to time. But funny how I'm always the one paying. Yesterday, Jack and I were at a restaurant for lunch. Steve somehow showed up and sat with us. We ate lunch and chattered. Then before we left and I was about to pay the bill, Jack gestured for me to pay for Steve's meal too. I played dumb and said, "I'm sorry, but why should I pay for his meal?" Jack obviously didn't want to say because he had cancer and is struggling out loud and in front of Steve, so he asked me to step outside so we could talk. I refused and said that there was nothing to say, that Steve had cancer, which was unfortunate and all that, but that in no way makes him entitled to my money. Steve looked stunned. He glanced at Jack and Jack was fuming. He told me to just pay this time, but I only paid for our lunch, then got up and made my way out. I heard him repeatedly apologizing to Steve as I was walking out. Jack didn't come home, but left 4 nasty texts calling me unhinged, petty, selfish, and short-sighted, as well as unsympathetic to what his friend went and is going through. I texted back that his friend's unfortunate circumstances aren't my responsibility, nor are they my fault. He said I'd lose nothing if I just paid for his lunch, and that walking out on him was nasty beyond comprehension. I told him he could have paid for him if he felt so strongly about it. He responded by saying I was being willingly ignorant, since I know he's out of job as of now, and said that a small act of kindness could have gotten me a long way, but I made it about myself, my money, and jeopardized his friendship for no reason. He's still mad, saying he won't speak to me till I make it up to him and Steve. Am I the a-hole for walking out and refusing to pay? Not the a-hole. Dump this guy and let him date Steve. I don't know what to say honestly. You could tell your fiancé to get a job and pay for his friend's electronics and restaurant meals if he really truly felt bad about a guy's cancer. He's a leech. You're not married yet, so he's still on his best behavior. It'll only get worse if you go through with marrying him. He's testing the waters, isn't he? Getting her used to taking orders on what to pay for, getting nasty to put her off complaining. And pleasant. Not the a-hole. And are you sure he isn't inviting his friend out on your dime with the premise he told his friend you were treating? Really feels like Jack and Steve are dating, and Opie is just financing the dates. Like, why else would Jack expect Opie to pay for everything? He's choosing to invite his friend. Why are they buying electronics in a group? Why are you paying it not to your boyfriend? Not the a-hole, and I would end this relationship. Like I said, he promised to pay everything back once he starts working. He even carries a small notebook to write down that stuff I paid for and how much I paid. Now, I didn't pressure him to pay me back, but he's insisting, saying that he can't bring himself to let me, a woman, pay for his needs. I call BS. Stop paying for Jack too. You are being used. Yep, Opie is being played and can't see it. Not the a-hole, Opie, but you will be if you keep enabling your boyfriend and Steve. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife I'll purchase the coffee I want because I'm the one with a job? I've lately come to enjoy some nicer coffee than I usually drank. I brew it at home, so we're not talking daily $7 drinks or anything. Instead of getting a giant bulk bag of Kirkland coffee, I've come to enjoy a $12 bag from the grocery store. It lasts a bit over a week, maybe 2, instead of $15 for about 5 weeks. My wife doesn't work while I work from home. She also unfortunately isn't doing a lot around the house right now because of a medical condition. I've been picking up most of the slack while she sits around. This has been going on for 6 months for the household, years for the job. Yes, she has depression, and yes, she's getting treatment for it. I try my best to do what I can, but oftentimes I have to ask her multiple times to help with even simple tasks to share responsibility. We've had discussions on how I know she's working on the issue, but I can't do everything on my own. I make plenty to be able to have my coffee be a splurge. She'd previously commented on a cost, and I said, it's well within the budget, and I like it. It's fine. I'd shown her the grocery budget in a budgeting app, which is nearly always under budget every month for the past few years. I brought home another bag the other day, and she made a comment along the lines of, "You're spending way too much on this fancy coffee. You need to go back to the other stuff." Having had to make the grocery run again, after doing other household chores that morning, I snapped. The one with a job gets to make the grocery choices. Work again or contribute to the household and you can have a say in what we buy. She called me a cold-hearted a-hole and stormed out of the room. So, am I the a-hole for my reaction to being called out on coffee buying? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Not at all. This has absolutely nothing to do with coffee. I suffer from severe depression and anxiety. The more I sit and do nothing, the worse it gets. All the treatments in the world are totally useless if I don't follow through with my actions. Time for her to find another therapist and develop a real plan for getting back to participating in life. Thank you for your insight. She's actually putting off therapist appointments for a while. I should encourage her to make one and check in on that. Maybe even just gently prodding her into going for evening walks again like we used to. I really, really want her to be well and enjoying life. I know my post comes off as grouchy and I did apologize for what I said to her. I love her like crazy. This post is just a snapshot of our lives. It's not everything by any means. Coffee's not your problem, but you know this, right? Yeah, it's not about a coffee. It's about her trying to make Opie as miserable as she is, by removing anything that brings him any happiness no matter how small. That behavior is toxic. Not today, Hall, but I do feel there may be more than the coffee issue going on for the response you gave. Definitely better ways to talk about it than the response provided. I admit, I'm growing resentful for having to be responsible for income, laundry, shopping, cleaning, and most cooking. Even doing grocery pickup, where I order online and all you have to do is call the store when you drive up, is too much sometimes for her. I have to ask or remind her multiple times to do shared chores, which half the time I end up doing anyway. You're human, OB. Every one of us snaps every once in a while, and it sounds like you've been filling her cup in terms of compassionate care and you're not getting it back because she's struggling with depression. I'm not advocating meanness, but sometimes for our own sakes, we need to draw a hard line and unfortunately speak harsh truths so our partners understand us. You should definitely have a talk with your wife so she understands that coffee equals joy, and by questioning or denying you that one small pleasure after how hard you're sacrificing to keep you two afloat, you snapped. Apologize for the words you used, but if you're really at your wit's end in terms of resentment, don't apologize for the sentiment. Last story. Am I the a-hole for calling my fiance selfish for refusing to let my dad walk me down the aisle? My fiance, 26 male, and I, 23 female, have been together for over 2 years. I don't have a big family, just my dad and my older sister. My dad has always been a single parent, devoting his life for me and my sister, and working over 14 plus jobs in the past 6 years to provide for us. I love my dad, and we have the best relationship anyone could hope for. However, my fiancé does not get along with him. They have different opinions on so many things. For example, my fiancé one time suggested to my dad to sell the truck he has because it's been sitting there for years. My dad got offended because it is my grandfather's truck, and he has no money to get it fixed. Another example, my fiancé got mad at my dad at a party for talking about his struggle after my mom's death and accused him of collecting sympathy points. But dad said that he always talks about it casually. The recent disagreement was when my dad refused to give my fiancé money to contribute to the wedding. My fiancé complained, but I said that my dad isn't obligated to pay for the wedding. Yesterday, my fiancé told me to look for someone else to walk me down the aisle, and I asked why. He said that my dad refused to help with the wedding and he should be grateful he's still invited. I got upset and argued that for one, my dad refused to contribute because he has no money. He cannot afford to pay. And two, just like any bride, I want my dad to walk me down the aisle on my wedding day. He threw a fit, saying that I was trying to ruin his mood and get him upset on our wedding day. But I called him selfish for wanting to take away the moment I always dreamed of. Sounds cliche, but I'm like that. Over his disagreements with dad. It's not fair, given that me and my dad are on great terms. He yelled at me for calling him selfish, although it's our wedding, not just mine. And I said that I clearly don't give a hoot if he's uncomfortable, and then walked out. He's fuming and insisting I'm being inconsiderate and projecting on him when I called him selfish. Red flags. Your fiancé is trying to control you. He sees your father as a threat to his control over you. There is no rational reason as to why he is taking issue with the issues he has been having a go at you over. I have been where you are. Please, OP, look up the term coercive control. I wish I had realized this concept sooner. Not the a-hole. I don't know. I thought that these disagreements were minor and they will at some points move past them. But it turns out I was wrong. He says it's his wedding too, which is true, but I really can't do this to my dad. I want him to be there with me and not just as a guest. He criticized your dad for how he handled grief. This does not sound like a man who knows how to love. Please reconsider this wedding. It was heartbreaking to read that Opie's fiancé accused dad of collecting sympathy points when openly expressing grief. Grief is hard on anyone, but we also know that most men are not taught to express their emotions and vulnerabilities openly or sharing challenging experiences like losing a partner. The fact that Opie's dad has got into a place where he can talk about it casually and does so is huge. And Fiance's response was so toxic and problematic. OP, not the a-hole. Run. Don't marry this dude. Your life is yours. But you're also young. Even if you're keen on having kids soon, you have plenty of time. Best of luck to you. Why are you marrying this guy? Sell your truck or you're not my friend. You're grieving too much. Too publicly. And then the gall to publicly shame your dad for not grieving to his standards. You will be paying for my wedding. If he wants this to determine his relationships, that's his call. But to ask that you limit your relationships to the people he approves, that's awfully controlling and self-centered. I doubt that your dad is the only person that brings out the self-centered idiot in him. It sounds like you've dismissed an awful lot of his behavior. But if you are going to make the mistake of marrying this jerk, not the a-hole for having your father walk you down the aisle. Wow, not married yet, and he is already trying to isolate OP from her family. All of his issues with the dad are just ridiculous. OP, ditch the fiancé, not your dad. He is going to escalate this controlling behavior if you get married to him. This is not a red flag. This is a bright flashing neon sign saying, run away.